Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Maria Parham, editorial page editor for the Arizona Daily Star and host of AZ Illustrated Metro. Tonight we'll see what role Tucson plays in developing border security technology. Talk about Pima Community College's decision to give in-state tuition to some undocumented students. Check in with local lawmakers about the differences in this legislative session. And ask a city councilman how next year's budget will be $15 million smaller. But first, a look at today's top stories.
The Arizona House approved a measure today prohibiting student groups at the state's 3 public universities from automatically collecting a $2 fee from students if the money is going to be used for politics. The Arizona Student Association used part of the fees it collected to support last year's ballot question extending the 1-penny sales tax for education. Some state lawmakers and members of the Board of Regents didn't like that, so that's why State Representative John Kavanaugh sponsored the bill. The students argued that politicians had no problem with their financial support of the same proposal 3 years earlier when the governor was backing it. The state Senate still must vote on the measure. Mark Kelly, the husband of Gabrielle Giffords and co-founder of Americans for Responsible Solutions, is getting blasted by those who oppose the group's advocacy of a universal background check on gun purchases. Last week, Kelly posted this picture on Facebook of buying a gun. He went to a Tucson gun shop to buy a handgun and ended up walking out with an AR-15 assault weapon also. During a news conference last week, he mentioned buying the gun to show how easy the background check is.
I bought a gun recently. Takes 5 minutes. It's a small price that everyone should pay.
At the news conference, Kelly did not mention what weapons he bought. That was all posted on Facebook. He also says he will turn the assault rifle over to the Tucson Police Department. And a federal judge has ruled against challengers of a state law restricting ethnic studies classes in public schools. U.S. District Judge Wallace Tashima ruled that all but one part of the law used to shut down TUSD's Mexican American Studies classes is constitutional. Teachers and students from TUSD challenged the constitutionality of the law. Attorney General Tom Horne, who helped write the law, caused the ruling a victory. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
Immigration reform is back on the agenda in Congress, but it is being politically tied to border security. As Christopher Conover reports, a group of Tucson-based companies recently gathered to show off some of their solutions to the question of border security.
Looking at the border in places like Douglas or Nogales, you may think it is secure. But if you ask many people on the border, be they officials with the Border Patrol, local governments, or even residents, they'll tell you another story. They all acknowledge that the Tucson sector of the border is the most porous in the Southwest. Politicians also point out things are getting better, calling attention to the fact that the number of Border Patrol agents in the area is at its highest level. Despite that, officials like Governor Jan Brewer want what they call more boots on the ground, and that's not all.
You know, we need a lot more fencing in the areas where it would be productive, UAVs in the air, more technology. We need more, probably, Border Patrol agents. We need boots on the ground.
Technology and officers, patrols and boots are often grouped together in calls for better security. As if to drive that point home, DRS Technologies, a Maryland-based company, has recently set up a tower to test border surveillance near the University of Arizona Tech Park.
That's for testing.
They're hoping that the field test will convince the Border Patrol to buy the product.
Our solution involves a long-range radar with long-range cameras that can see both during the day and at night, that can detect activity, that allow an operator to see that detection on a command and control screen. They can then put the camera on that target and determine whether it's an individual, a group of individuals, an animal, a conveyance.
who believe as I do.
At a recent town hall meeting in Green Valley, U.S. Senator John McCain said he wants to see technology along the border.
We also need to use and implement the technology that we developed in Afghanistan and Iraq. The use of drones, the use of sensors, the use of what my old military friends will know of as we call it situational awareness. In other words, a place where we receive the information, where you can surveil the entire border with this kind of technology, and when you see it penetrated with situational awareness, you can put people out to stop or apprehend or deter them.
This technology area
DRS has already sold some of its towers and mobile technology to the governments of Jordan and Egypt. But it's not the only technology company bidding for contracts with the federal government. Strongwatch has a pickup truck-based surveillance system.
You roll up the tonneau cover, you can see the entire skid mount. I control all features of the system through my gaming controller. The primary one would be the X button, which is going to be your trigger for your lasers. This is a 16-foot mast when it's fully extended. As I swing the camera back towards you all so you can have better ideas to what you're looking at. Lower right-hand corner is your color camera that has a low light feature to use during dusk and dawn conditions. Different zoom levels, focus, polarities that you can use.
Strongwatch is a local company supplying dozens of border sheriffs from California to Texas with the mobile surveillance units. But when it comes to border technology, some are skeptical.
One of the major programs, which was called SBI Net, made by Boeing, by the way, was a $787 million debacle. We paid Boeing $787 billion to set up a series of sensors all across the southwest border, and it utterly failed.
The use of more border technology faces one more hurdle: money. Currently, the federal government, including the Border Patrol, is operating under sequester, which means an automatic 5% budget cut.
The Pima Community College Governing Board voted to allow in-state tuition for students granted temporary legal immigration status. The decision is based on President Obama's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. It allows some undocumented people to qualify for legal status if they meet certain requirements. Joining me in the studio now to discuss the decision is Brenda Even, the chairwoman of the Pima Community College Governing Board. Brenda, thanks so much for being here today and to helping us understand the decision you've made. Tell us some about how the board came to the decision, what the pros and cons were as they weighed it.
Well, I think probably the most important thing was the fact that this just happened in June, and then I think we had the various presidents got together in the fall at some point, and there was the presidents of the community college presidents, and they discussed the idea, at least so that then it could be passed on to the various boards. And I think Maricopa had made the decision officially that they were going to accept a form called I-766, which is a work authorization. And it was okayed by one of our House bills earlier, I think around 2008, 2009, something like that. But that was a form that could be used. And I think one of the things that we were looking at was the idea, are there any legal ramifications? How does this fit with the various things that the state has done and the latest proposition and various things? So we decided that the best thing to do would be to kind of take a look. What is ABOR? How are they going to look at this?
And ABOR, you need to explain for
the
everybody.
Arizona Board of Regents. Sorry about those acronyms.
Yes.
But what we realized was that there was information that needed to be discussed and needed to be kind of displayed so that we would have some idea of what is the history and et cetera. And we had no meeting in December. I think ABOR made their, again, Arizona Board of Regents made their individual statement in, I think it was the end of November, somewhere in there. And then the Maricopa Community College group had decided they would use this form I-766, and they made the decision. We had no meeting in December, so we had it on our agenda in January for discussion and just to have the background information so we'd know what we were talking about. And we then put that on our agenda for February and passed it. And I think
so. You're about ready to go. How many students do you think might take advantage of this?
I don't think we know. I think that's something that is yet to be determined, because these individuals who would fall into the category, and of course there are about 7 different aspects that they have to have been in this country before they were 16, and they couldn't be more than 31 now. They may need to be in school. They had to have a GED or a high school diploma, be in the armed services, etc. There are a number of qualifications. And then, of course, they have to then show their residency piece. And but I think that we have a lot of young people. Certainly we had many who came to our board meeting, and they were most dedicated and enthusiastic. So I think they will go through that process. How long that process takes for them, I don't know. We're hoping to be available for them to be enrolled in fall, and with the fall semester. So we're in the process of getting ourselves set to have a number of these young people apply for the in-state tuition.
All right, so is there any financial impact for the college of offering this lower tuition for students?
I don't know that we can give you a definitive answer. We probably can after a semester, because there are students who are now enrolled, and we need to know how many of them are enrolled who are paying out-of-state tuition, and then we have no idea what the influx of individuals will be. So I think that's kind of up in the air. And for this spring semester, I believe Maricopa Community College had 100. So it's hard to know if it would be that or if it would be more, but we'll certainly be tracking that and would have more information after next fall semester.
So what kind of reaction have you gotten to this decision from the public and also within the college?
Well, I think it's been very positive. Certainly the public seems to have responded very positively, and we certainly had a full house when we met, and many, many comments, no negative comments in the call to the audience. And I'm sure there are those who are still concerned about the immigrant aspect of it. But I believe the board felt, and I can refer to the board decision since it's been made, is that these are young people who have been here. They had no choice about coming, but they have been here, and this has been their home. They have gone through our school systems, etc. This does not seem to be an outlandish decision in any way.
But one of your board members did dissent, voted against it.
And his comment, and Scott Stewart always looks at, what could be a downside. He's an engineer, and he is, but we consider his input vital, in the sense that he was talking about what might be the legal ramifications. But I think no matter what we do, whether it's status or presence, and that is the issue if it's going to be a legal one, there has been nothing as far as Maricopa is concerned, and now I see that the presidents of the 3 universities are seeking to have this be in state for their universities.
Thanks so much for being here today.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
2 American soldiers were gunned down in eastern Afghanistan today, one day after Afghan President Karzai accused U.S. forces of working with the Taliban to stage suicide bombings.
We examine the latest tensions in the U.S.-Afghan relationship, coming as Chuck Hagel ends his first trip there as Defense Secretary.
Then we turn to Kenya, where an election challenge raises fears of instability for a critical U.S. ally.
Jeffrey Brown looks at a question that's arisen just in the past few years. What happens to your email, Facebook page, online photos, and other digital memories when you die?
And we close with the story of a Japanese town hit hard by the nuclear disaster, where renewable energy could be the key to a better future. That's all ahead on tonight's NewsHour.
There's one responsibility everyone wants to put off.
It's much easier to end up going to the dentist or scheduling a mammogram than it is to do something that's much simpler, but it just feels so impossible and so confusing.
That daunting task is writing a will. I'm Renee Montaigne, estate planning made easier, on the next morning edition from NPR News.
This year's regular session of the Arizona Legislature has so far been characterized by a civil tone. Some lawmakers say that tone was missing in recent years when Republicans had supermajorities in both chambers. The GOP is still in the majority, but with smaller numbers, and that may account for the change. Michael Chihak reports from Phoenix.
2 months into the 2013 state legislative session, there have been no over-the-top partisan arguments and little in the way of a charged political atmosphere. It's still early, of course, and the legislature must produce a budget, its most difficult and time-consuming task. So anything could happen. But so far, legislators of both parties say, they are working well together and they favor the new congeniality as a path to progress on the state's key issues.
I think that a lot of us have really heard the voters and said it's time to stop bickering and start coming up with common sense, realistic solutions to the issues that we're facing. It remains to be seen whether some of those conversations will come to an agreement on the vote. So conversations are the beginning step, and the vote is really where it comes down. So we'll see in the coming weeks even what's really going to materialize.
Well, I think the tone is much more respectful from one party towards the other. The way that I look at it, and the reason I don't buy into the hardball politics of pushing a group out, is there are good ideas from both sides of the aisle, and oftentimes the best ideas come from the two sides working together to create a compromise. I mean, there are some very core values that I won't compromise on. There are some very core values that they won't compromise on. But in the middle, you can craft some very good legislation. So I think it's a respecting of the ideas.
I'm a Democrat, but I've been spending all my time talking with Republicans and really made some good contacts with folks.
Are you making some headway there?
I am making headway, yeah. There are several Republicans working on bills that I've suggested to them who are moving ahead with it. There's a number of things I've got working in the budget.
The reach across party boundaries is coming even from Republican Governor Jan Brewer, with Democratic freshman Representative Mark Cardenas of Phoenix saying her office has been in touch with him.
Even today, the governor's office has reached out to me to talk about her budget proposal, specifically dealing with Medicaid and the TPT reform. And I believe that in previous sessions that didn't occur. And for a freshman to get a visit from the governor's staff specifically to talk about the budget, I mean, that just speaks volumes into how this legislature is different from the last one.
One of the things that's been a pleasant surprise is how well, particularly among the freshmen, the Republicans and Democrats are able to work together. We have 13 out of a House of 60. We have 13 new Republicans and 13 new Democrats. That's almost half the House. One of the dangers of term limits is you lose institutional knowledge. One of the benefits of term limits is it's easy to change the culture of an organization. And I think among the freshmen, we're really forging some bipartisan relationships. A number of the bills that I'm supporting on environmental legislation and mental health issues I'm an equal co-partner with the Democrat that I'm sponsoring the bill with.
Senator Olivia Cajero Bedford is a legislative veteran, now in her second term in the upper chamber after serving 4 terms in the House. The Tucson Democrat says this session is different than any other.
There is just a friendlier atmosphere. Democratic bills, a few Democratic bills have been heard where before they weren't heard. Mayor Rothschild came up and had a very pleasant, amenable meeting with President Biggs. The whole atmosphere is just totally different. I can't speak for the House, but I know in the Senate it is much more agreeable, much more pleasant. There isn't the tension that there was in the last 2 years. Totally different.
Cajero Bedford's fellow Tucson Democratic Senator Steve Farley is new to the Senate, but served 3 terms in the House. So, he says, he has learned how to get along across the aisle.
You've got your D and your R out here, but in the mix, there's a lot of back and forth. There are things you'll have in common with other people, people you might not even expect. I don't agree with Al Melvin on most anything, but he and I see eye to eye on animal cruelty bills. So we work together on that. He and I see eye to eye on the texting while driving and various distracted driving issues, so we work really well on that. You find stuff that you can work with people on it. And when they go off and say their ideological stuff, you kind of just roll your eyes and turn away, and then you work on the stuff that really matters.
Everyone here represents a district. Everyone worked very hard to represent that district. So if I were to alienate a person because of their party, what I'm doing in effect is alienating 213,000 people that are my fellow Arizonans. And I just think that's silly.
The partisan bickering that you've always heard about in the media, I mean, it's not there.
The Tucson City Council found out last week it is going to have to adjust for a $15 million budget deficit next fiscal year. The council has until June 30 to set a budget that meets that lower spending requirement. Joining us in the studio now is Tucson City Councilman Paul Cunningham. Councilman, thanks so much for being here today. Could you start out by giving us just a brief overview of the city's budget and what its main revenue sources are?
Well, the total budget is usually about $1.3 billion. About 450 to 480 is discretionary funding. The funding sources of that 450 to $500 million that we get every year is primarily through city sales tax, and then we also get some state share revenues. We get some very little bit of property taxes, and then fees and permit fees and user fees and other things is where we get the last part of the revenue.
All right, now, why is there a $15 million deficit?
Believe it or not, it's actually 99% due to some pension issues. In other words, the pension algorithm and actuarial over the past 10 years was a little bit flawed. Some things happened that were probably unexpected when they drew up the pension plan, and as a result, we have a gap in the pension funding for both public safety, which uses one pension plan, and other employees that are non-public safety employees, which is another pension plan, and both of those have basically contributed to this total gap of about $15 million.
Now, is any of this due to sequestration, which we've heard so much about?
Really minuscule. I mean, it would mean that there's less federal money being held in very small program. I mean, it'd be very, very indirect, very tiny bit. I mean, I'd really doubt it.
Now, I know you've talked about the pension issue before, so what was your reaction to this? Did it come as a surprise to you?
We knew that we'd have some challenges with regard to pensions. We really didn't know how high. The issue with public safety pensions is something that's going on with municipalities throughout the state. And not only that, it's a program fixed by the state. So a lot of those issues we're not even in the position to solve. There's 2 cases in litigation. There's a number of things that are outside of the city council's purview to handle the public safety situation. One of the issues that we have is that Tucson Fire has 60 less firefighters, and they have 98 firefighters who are on our program called DROP. So that's 160 less firefighters than expected paying into the system, and therefore it's a little higher than other cities, but the firefighters do a great job. So it's really tough to say that there's any issue that any other city isn't dealing with. The same goes with police. We've had to reduce the number of police we had. We used to have anywhere between 1,000 to 1,100 police officers. Now we have right around 1,000. Plus we have 112 officers on the drop, which means that they do not pay into the system, and therefore there's a shortage. But again, a lot we can't do about that. Some of that is at the state level, and some of that is in court, and so you just have to somewhat stomach it and leave it be and try to come up with alternative solutions. On the other side, there's the civilian pension program, and that program is set up by the city.
Okay, so as far as options for increasing revenue, are there any good sources coming in? Are there any bright spots on this future?
Yeah, I mean, we might see another actualization in sales tax increases. We might see some revenues realized because of annexations or land sales, and those could be one-time fixes. Some other one-time fixes is there's we can make one more debt restructuring, and if we do it now, it would probably be our last time we could ever do it. If we can't do a debt restructuring next year, and that can save, half of the gap. So there's a number of different strategies that are there. As far as debt restructuring goes, it still adds to what you owe total. It still kicks the can down the road. So I'm not a big fan of debt restructuring. When you have to really, really do it, that's one thing, but this time we could probably avoid it and still find the money.
Well, and there's a problem also with the bond rating again if you restructure the debt. Is that true?
Our bond rating is absolutely in jeopardy anytime. The more debt restructurings you had, it's just like a person with extra credit cards. It hurts your credit rating to buy a house. So it's the same principle, and we just need to be really responsible about kicking that can down the road. Long-term financial sustainability is something that I've talked about for a long time, and the only way we can achieve that is not taking out new debt, is not renewing debt, is not reissuing bonds, but literally letting those things expire.
Well, so where are we going to see the cuts? What are the options out there?
Well, first of all, part of it is the pie is going to get bigger. So I don't think it's going to be really 15 million per se in the end. I think it'll be more like 9, maybe 10 million. And there's some savings we can get with vacancy savings, with a reduction in overtime. There's some small tweaks to the budget we can get with regard to that. So we'll see this 9 or 10 million. Then the other part is a discussion about maybe restructuring how we do pensions. The city staff brought to us a package last week to restructure how the pensions are calculated. It's not to get too technical, but it would expand how we calculate pensions and change some things. It made some assumptions that some experts that I talked to made them very leery that a lot of corporations would never even allow to do in their pension program. So I've been critical about it. I think there's some other things we can do. We also have a real disparity with our city employees. We have some city employees paying 14% and some city employees paying 5%. We're the only pension system in the state that has a locked-in actual percentage. Even the ASRS, they have it set up.
ASRS?
That's the Arizona State Retirement for like teachers and stuff like that. They pay a ratio, but it's still adjustable. We're the only one that are locked in.
How do you change that, though?
Well, according to what some lawyers say, it's the state constitution. What other people say is actually there's nothing that stops us from changing it, and we can take a look at changing it. We would get sued by a contingency of our own employees. So, I mean, it's a really tough thing.
Obviously an issue. Yeah. So I'm sure the city residents are wondering, though, what is this going to mean for them?
I don't think there's going to be a lot of changes. The $15 million gap, remember, there's about $4 or $5 million we can actualize in specific savings and different programs. We can get a little extra court money capture. So there's some things that we can do there, as well as we have a fund balance of $8.6 million, so we have some cushion. And then finally, there's always going to be that option for the debt restructure. It's something that I probably won't vote for, but I'm sure that my colleagues may consider it.
But actually, I mean, how are we going to go forward here, though? What do you think the council is going to do?
Unfortunately, the option that some of them might want to take is the debt restructuring, and I'm just not going to be happy with that. So I'll probably vote against that. I'll probably put together a package that does some across-the-board cuts that are very minuscule that will be an option, but I don't think I'll get any. I don't think it'll get any legs.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks. That's our show for today. To post a comment on any of these stories or keep up with the latest news, go online to our website, azpm.org. I'm Maria Parham. Thanks for watching.